What happens when assumptions and prejudice collide with unimaginable power? We've all had bad travel days. We've all felt underestimated. But what if being underestimated cost the person who judged you $700 million? This isn't a fantasy. This is the story of Serafina Hayes, a self-made billionaire who just wanted to fly from New York to London in the seat she paid for. But when a flight attendant decided Serafina's face didn't fit in first class, she wasn't just removed from a flight. She was removed from her patients. And with one single phone call from the terminal, she pulled a financial trigger that sent an entire airline into a state of panic, proving that true power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just hangs up. The scent of the JFK International Terminal was a familiar, cloying mix of Cinnabon, stale coffee, and the faint, metallic tang of jet fuel. It was a smell Serafina Hayes usually associated with exhaustion, and tonight was no exception. At 28, Serafina, or Rena to the three people who actually knew her, was the sole founder and CEO of Etherian Dynamics, a company that had quietly, and then very, very loudly, revolutionized global logistics through predictive AI. Her personal net worth, a number she rarely thought about, had recently crossed the 12 comma threshold. And yet, looking at her, you would never know it. She stood near the departures board for Global American Airlines, GAA, indistinguishable from the stressed-out college students around her. She wore a faded, charcoal grey Howard University hoodie, her alma mater, a pair of worn-out jeans, and a simple black baseball cap pulled low, taming the cloud of black curls she hadn't had time to braid. In her hand, she held a battered leather backpack. She looked like a graduate student flying standby, not a titan of industry who had just, 6 hours prior, finalized a deal that would restructure the shipping industry on 2 continents. This trip was a necessary indulgence. She hadn't taken a day off in 3 years. Her mother, living in a quiet Belgravia flat in London, thought she was still buried in meetings in California. Rena had decided to surprise her for her 60th birthday. The simplest way was to book the next flight out. GAA Flight 117, JFK to Heathrow. Her assistant, in a moment of panic, had only been able to secure a commercial seat. Seat 1A, first class. Rena didn't mind. She often flew commercial. It kept her grounded, reminded her of what she was building for. The NetJet's Gulfstream G650, her board insisted she use, sat in a hangar in Teterboro. But flying private was, to her, a sterile experience. She preferred the messy, chaotic humanity of a public airport. Tonight, however, that preference was about to be severely tested. The trouble began not with a bang, but with a microaggression so subtle she almost missed it. At the dedicated first-class check-in, the agent, a man whose tag read Mark Jenkins, looked up from his screen, scanned her, and then looked past her. "Excuse me, ma'am. This line is for first class and platinum members only. The main cabin check-in is down that hall." His smile was a tight, plastic counterfeit of customer service. Rena didn't sigh. She didn't roll her eyes. She simply placed her passport on the scale. "Serafina Hayes, Flight 117 to Heathrow. I'm checking 1 bag." Jenkins's eyes flicked to her passport, then to her face, then back. The name Serafina Hayes didn't register. Why would it? She wasn't an actress or a musician. Her name only appeared on the Forbes list, a publication Jenkins probably didn't read. He saw her hoodie, her jeans, her skin. His brain processed the data and spat out an error. "Does not compute." "Right," he said, his tone shifting from dismissive to coldly professional. He typed, his fingers striking the keys with unnecessary force. 1 bag. It's 52 pounds. That's 2 pounds over the limit. There will be a $100 overweight fee. Rena looked at the scale. 52.0. Your first-class allowance is 70 pounds. she stated. It wasn't a question. Jenkins flushed, a dark red crawling up his neck. He'd been caught. Ah, yes, of course. The system lagged. He tagged the bag with a neon orange priority tag and shoved it onto the belt with a thud. Your gate is B24. Boarding begins at 9:15 p.m. The Oasis first-class lounge is just past security. He handed her the boarding pass without making eye contact. Rena took it. Thank you, Mark. Have a good night. She walked away, feeling the weight of his stare on her back. It was a familiar feeling, one she'd endured through countless boardrooms, investor meetings, and now, apparently, airport terminals. The feeling of being an anomaly, a puzzle that people were too lazy to solve and instead simply dismissed. She cleared security in minutes via the clear reserved lane, another small luxury that went unnoticed by the agents, and made her way to the Oasis lounge. The lounge was a bubble of forced tranquility, low lighting, soft jazz, the quiet clinking of glasses. The attendant at the desk, a woman with a severe blonde bob, gave her the same once-over as Jenkins. Can I help you? The question hung in the air, weighted with suspicion. Rena handed over her boarding pass. Seat 1A. The woman's eyebrows shot up, a flicker of surprise, before she regained her composure. Of course, Ms. Hayes. Welcome to the Oasis Lounge. The bar is to your left, and a hot buffet is available. Rena nodded, took her pass, and walked inside. The lounge was crowded. Men in rumpled suits talked too loudly into their phones about synergy and leverage. A family in matching tracksuits had taken over a corner, their children watching tablets at full volume. Rena found a small, single chair in a dark corner, away from the main traffic. She sat, put her backpack at her feet, and pulled out her phone. There were 47 unread emails, but only one she cared about. A text from her CFO, Arthur Vance. Arthur, it's done. The Ethereum Blackwood acquisition is complete. Their assets are ours. Wire confirmation received. Rena smiled, a small, genuine expression. Blackwood Capital. It was an old-guard investment firm, stuffy and traditional, but they managed a staggering $200 billion in corporate assets, and now they belonged to Ethereum. This was the real reason she was celebrating. This was the deal she'd just closed. A new text came in. Arthur. Also, just an FYI, that Global American Air Holdings commercial paper we discussed, the 700 meter tranche, Blackwood is the sole broker for it. It's now in our portfolio. Returns a week. Recommend we divest when the market opens Monday. Rena typed back. Understood. Let's discuss tomorrow. I'm going offline, going to see Mom. She put her phone on silent and leaned her head back, finally closing her eyes. She just needed a few hours of peace. She was in Seat 1A. She was in the lounge. The hard part was over. She was wrong. From across the lounge, a woman in a crisp Global American uniform was watching her. She wasn't a lounge employee. She was a flight attendant. Her name tag, pinned perfectly above her silver wings, read Karen Vickers. She had been with the airline for 25 years, and she considered the first-class cabin her house. And she had just watched a girl in a ripped-knee hoodie and a baseball cap walk into her house and sit down. She picked up her phone and walked to the service desk. I'm the lead purser for Flight 117, she said to the lounge attendant. Tell me about the passenger in the corner, the one in the hoodie. The attendant pulled up the manifest. Hayes, Serafina. Seat 1A, looks like a full-fare F-class ticket. Karen Vickers frowned. 1A? That's impossible. That seat was reserved for... She stopped. It didn't matter. The girl looked wrong. She felt wrong. Probably a stolen ticket, she muttered, or a buddy pass gone wrong. She walked back to her station, her eyes never leaving Rena. This was her flight, her cabin, and she would protect its integrity. The situation, as she was already calling it in her head, would be handled. For 45 minutes, Serafina Hayes knew peace. She didn't sleep, but she entered that quiet, meditative state of exhaustion where the ambient noise of the lounge, the clinking ice, the muffled announcements, blurred into a soothing white noise. She was mentally walking through the code base of Ethereum's new predictive engine, her happy place. The bubble was burst by a sharp, nasal voice. "Ma'am! Ma'am!" Rena's eyes snapped open. Standing over her was the flight attendant she had vaguely registered earlier, Karen Vickers. She was in her late 40s, with hair pulled into a severe bun that seemed to stretch the skin of her face. Her smile was a thin, red gash of lipstick. "I'm sorry, but this seating area is reserved," Vickers said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Rena looked around. The chair she was in was identical to the others. "Reserved. There's no sign." "It's an unspoken rule, honey," Vickers said, her smile tightening. "This section is for our true Platinum Premier and Concierge Key members. You seem a bit lost. The main cabin waiting area is by gate B30. The accusation was so naked, so brazen, that Rena was momentarily speechless. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a challenge. Every other person in the lounge was now stealing glances, sensing the low-pressure system of a confrontation building. "I'm not lost," Rena said, her voice quiet but firm. She held up her boarding pass. "I'm in seat 1A. I'm fine right here." Vickers's eyes narrowed. She had expected the girl to be cowed, to apologize and scurry away. This quiet confidence was infuriating. She glanced at the boarding pass but dismissed it. Boarding passes can be confusing. Sometimes a gate agent prints the wrong one. "I'm just trying to save you the embarrassment of being moved later," Vickers pressed on. "I'm not confused," Rena replied, her patience starting to fray. The exhaustion was returning, but now it was laced with adrenaline. "I am in the correct lounge, and I am waiting for my flight. Are you the lead for Flight 117? "I am," Vickers said, drawing herself up, as if this confirmed her authority. "And as the lead purser, it's my job to ensure all our first-class passengers are comfortable, and that all regulations are followed." "Then you should know," Rena said, "that as a full-fare first-class passenger, I am entitled to be in this lounge, and unless you are here to offer me a pre-departure beverage, I'd like to be left alone." The snap of the retort was silent, but everyone watching felt it. The man talking about synergy stopped mid-sentence. Vickers's face, which had been a mask of condescending concern, turned to stone. The honey was gone, replaced by a glacial fury. "I see," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Well, Ms. Hayes, we take safety and security very seriously at Global American. We'll just have to see about your seat." She turned, her heels clicking an angry staccato on the marble floor, and marched straight to the gate, B24, which was visible from the lounge. Rena watched her go. She saw her lean in and speak animatedly to Mark Jenkins, the check-in agent. She saw Jenkins nodding, his face grim. He picked up his phone, spoke into it, and then looked toward the lounge. He and Vickers were pointing at her. A cold pit formed in Rena's stomach. This was escalating. This was no longer just about a prejudiced flight attendant. This was now an operational matter. "This is stupid," she muttered to herself. She could leave. She could call her pilot, have the G650 fueled, and be in the air in 2 hours. But why should she? She had paid for this ticket. She had a right to be here. She was not going to be bullied out of her seat by a woman who had decided, on sight, that she didn't belong. She put her phone back in her pocket and stood up. She slung her backpack over one shoulder and walked out of the lounge, heading toward the gate. The other passengers watched her go, a mix of pity and morbid curiosity on their faces. As she approached B-24, she saw that Vickers had been joined by Jenkins and 2 other GAA uniformed staff. It was a welcoming committee. "Ma'am," Jenkins said, stepping in front of her, blocking her path to the boarding lane. "There appears to be a problem with your ticket." "A problem?" Rena repeated, her voice flat. "What kind of problem?" "Ms. Vickers, our lead purser, has flagged your reservation for a security review. Your ticket, it doesn't seem to match our records." This was a blatant lie, and he knew it. "That's fascinating," Rena said, "because your app on my phone says, 'On time and boarding soon.' Why don't you scan it? See what happens?" She held out her phone, the QR code for her boarding pass glowing. Jenkins looked at Vickers. Vickers gave a tiny, imperceptible shake of her head. "Don't you dare prove me wrong." "The scanner here is faulty," Jenkins stammered. "You'll need to step aside, Mum. We need to call verification." "You're going to make me miss my flight." "We are just following procedure," Vickers interjected, her voice smooth as oil. "Passenger safety is our #1 priority. We can't have unverified individuals in the first-class cabin. I'm sure you understand." The unverified hung in the air, a coded message for everyone else in the boarding area. "She's not one of us." Rena looked at the 2 of them. The gate agent, weak and deferential, and the flight attendant, a petty tyrant wielding her small sliver of power like a weapon. Rena had dealt with people like this her whole life, people who weaponized rules to enforce their own prejudices. "Fine," Rena said, the ice in her voice matching the cold in her stomach. "Follow your procedure. Call verification. Call whoever you need to call. But know this. I am Serafina Hayes. My seat is 1A, and I will be on this flight." She stepped to the side, leaning against a pillar, and crossed her arms. She met Karen Vickers's triumphant gaze with a look of bored indifference. The battle of wills had begun. But Rena wasn't just in a battle of wills. She was in a nuclear war, and her opponent had just brought a plastic knife. The boarding announcement for Flight 117 echoed through the terminal. "We are now pleased to invite our first-class passengers, as well as our Platinum Premier members, to begin boarding at Gate B-24. A small crowd of well-dressed passengers rose from their seats and formed a line. Rena remained by her pillar. Jenkins and Vickers were huddled over a computer screen, engaged in a pantomime of serious investigation. "Ma'am, you can't stand there," a new gate agent, a younger woman, said as she tried to organize the boarding lane. "I'm waiting for Mr. Jenkins to verify my ticket," Rena said, gesturing to the huddle. The new agent sighed, recognizing the contours of a self-inflicted customer service disaster. "Mark," she called out, "Group 1 is boarding. What's the story here?" Mark Jenkins looked up, his face slick with a light sweat. He was trapped. He couldn't find a single thing wrong with the ticket. It was full fare, paid in full by an Ethereum Dynamics corporate card. It was legitimate. But Vickers was standing next to him, her presence a silent, immovable wall of pressure. It's fine," he finally said, defeated. "It's fine. She can board." Vickers shot him a look that could curdle milk. "Mark, are you sure? We can't be too careful." "It's fine, Karen," he snapped. "It's a valid ticket." Rena pushed off the pillar and walked to the front of the line, ignoring the glares from the passengers she had cut. She held her phone under the scanner. A cheerful beep echoed. The gate agent's screen flashed green. "Serafina Hayes, Seat 1A. Welcome aboard." "Thank you," Rena said, her voice dripping with irony. She walked past Jenkins and Vickers, down the jet bridge. She could feel Vickers's glare burning into her back. This wasn't over. Vickers wasn't just going to let this go. Being proven wrong had only enraged her. Rena knew, with a certainty that chilled her, that the flight attendant would be waiting for her at the aircraft door. And she was. As Rena stepped from the jet bridge into the galley of the Boeing 777, Karen Vickers was standing there, a bottle of water in one hand, her face a mask of poisonous hospitality. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Hayes," she said, her voice loud enough for the other flight attendants to hear. "I do hope you'll be comfortable. 1A is just to your left." The welcome felt like a threat. Rena just nodded and turned left into the first-class cabin. The cabin was a cocoon of beige plastic and dark blue upholstery. Her seat, 1A, was a spacious pod at the very front. In 1B, across the aisle, sat a man in a loud pink-striped blazer, already talking boisterously on his phone. "Yeah, I told them. You sink that 20 million or I walk. I walk. They know I'm the rainmaker," he brayed. Rena mentally dubbed him Chad. She slid into her seat and, with practiced efficiency, reached to put her backpack in the overhead bin. Before her fingers could even touch the latch, Vickers was there. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mum. That bag is not going to fit. You'll have to check it." Rena looked at her backpack. It was a standard-issue leather backpack, currently half empty. She looked at the overhead bin, which was vast and completely empty. "It will fit," Rena said. "That's not for you to decide," Vickers replied, her plastic smile back in place. "Airline policy states that bags of a certain dimension must be gate-checked to avoid delaying departure. And you've already caused a significant delay at the gate." This was it. This was the new angle. Humiliate her, inconvenience her, and blame her for it. "This bag contains my laptops," Rena said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. "It contains sensitive corporate documents and prototypes. It is not leaving my sight. It will fit in the bin." To prove her point, she opened the bin, placed her bag inside, where it fit with comical ease, taking up perhaps 1/4 of the space, and shut the door. "See? It fits." Vickers's face went white, then blotchy red. She had been defied, publicly, in her cabin. Chad in 1B had stopped his phone call to watch the show. "Ma'am, you cannot touch the overhead bins until we are at cruising altitude," Vickers lied, inventing a rule on the spot. "You have tampered with secured airline equipment. You need to open that bin. Give me the bag, or I will have you removed." "That is not a rule," Rena said, her patience evaporating like water on a hot skillet. "I am a paying passenger. This is my assigned seat. My bag is stowed. I am done talking to you." She sat down and fastened her seatbelt, the click of the buckle sounding like a gunshot in the quiet cabin. This was a tactical error. By sitting and buckling up, Rena believed she was signaling compliance and an end to the conflict. But to Karen Vickers, it was the ultimate act of defiance. The girl wasn't just wrong, she was disobedient. Vickers turned and stormed to the front galley. She grabbed the interphone. "This is the purser. I need the gate agent on the jet bridge now. We have a non-compliant passenger in 1A, a security threat." Rena's blood ran cold. Security threat. That was the magic word. The word that stripped a passenger of all rights. The word that meant you were guilty until proven innocent. And you were never proven innocent. Chad in 1B was now filming on his phone, a gleeful, voyeuristic smirk on his face. "This is going to be epic," he whispered. "She's going to get dragged off." The cabin door was still open. Mark Jenkins, his face ashen, appeared at the entrance. He looked terrified. "What is it, Karen? We're already 10 minutes behind." "This passenger," Vickers said, pointing at Rena as if she were a piece of contraband. She assaulted me. The lie was so enormous, so breathtakingly evil, that Raina's jaw literally dropped. What? I never even touched you. She shoved me to get to the overhead bin, Vickers shrieked, clutching her shoulder as if in pain. She's aggressive, and I don't feel safe flying with her. The entire crew is threatened. You need to remove her. Now. Mark Jenkins looked from Karen Vickers's theatrically pained expression to Serafina Hayes's look of stunned disbelief. He was a man with 20 years of airline service, and he knew. He knew. Vickers was lying. He could see it in her eyes, those two hard chips of blue malice. He knew her reputation. He knew she was a petty, vindictive tyrant who loved to put passengers in their place. But he was also a man 2 years from retirement, with a mortgage and a weak spine. Vickers was the lead purser. In the air, her word was law. On the ground, it carried the weight of a cannonball. If he defied her safety claim, he would be the one facing an inquiry. "Ma'am," Jenkins said, his voice trembling as he addressed Raina. "You've been accused of assaulting a crew member. You have to come with me." "She is lying," Raina said, her voice a steel blade. She looked past Jenkins, past Vickers, to the other first-class passengers. Chad in 1B was still filming, his phone held high. A woman in 2D was shaking her head, whispering, "How awful," to her husband. But no one spoke up. No one said, "That's not what happened." They were sheep, and the wolf was at the door. "Assaulting a crew member is a federal offense, ma'am," Jenkins said, reciting the line from his manual. "We have to deplane you. Please, just come with me. We can sort this out in the terminal." "Sort this out?" Raina repeated. The fog of exhaustion was gone, replaced by a crystalline, Arctic rage. "You mean you are going to publicly humiliate me based on a blatant lie from your employee?" "This woman is out of control," Vickers shrieked. "She's arguing. She's disruptive. Get her off this plane." She turned to the cabin. "I apologize for the delay, folks. We are dealing with a difficult passenger. Your safety is our primary concern." Jenkins flinched. The word disruptive was another trigger. He could no longer use discretion. He stepped into the aisle. "Ma'am, if you do not deplane voluntarily, I will have to call Port Authority police, and they will not be as polite as I am." The choice was simple. Walk or be dragged. Rena's mind, which processed logistics for a living, calculated the odds. If she was dragged, the video would be on TMZ in an hour. Unhinged woman attacks flight attendant. Her mother would see it. Her board would see it. It would be a stain. But if she walked, she would be giving in to the lie. She made her choice. She would fight this, but not in the mud. She would fight this from the high ground, where she built fortresses. Slowly she unbuckled her seatbelt. The click was deafening. She stood up. She looked at Chad in 1B, who quickly lowered his phone. She looked at Karen Vickers, whose face was a mask of smug victory. And she looked at Mark Jenkins, who couldn't meet her gaze. "You are all," she said, her voice quiet, but carrying through the entire cabin, making a terrible, terrible mistake. She reached up, opened the overhead bin, an act that made Vickers gasp as if she'd just pulled a pin on a grenade, and retrieved her backpack. She slung it over one shoulder. Then, with a dignity she didn't know she possessed, she turned and began the walk. It was 10 steps from 1A to the galley, but it felt like a mile. Every eye was on her. She could hear the whispers, the tsk-tsks, the judgment. She must have done something, you know. Those people, always so angry. She stepped onto the jet bridge. Jenkins was behind her. Vickers stood at the door, arms crossed, the victor defending her territory. As Raina stepped back into the terminal, she was met by 2 more GAA agents, And, to her horror, 2 Port Authority police officers. Jenkins had already called them. "Is this the passenger?" one of the officers asked, his hand resting on his hip. "Yes," Jenkins said, breathless. She's the one." "Mum, we need you to come with us," the officer said, his voice devoid of emotion. They weren't taking her to the customer service desk. They were taking her to an interview room. They walked her down the terminal, past the other gates, a small procession of shame. The police officers were a clear signal to everyone. This is a criminal. They put her in a small, windowless room, beige and smelling of bleach, a table, 3 chairs. Jenkins and the officers stood by the door. "Okay, Mr. Jenkins," the senior officer said. "What's the charge? Is the airline pressing charges for assault?" This was the moment. Jenkins swallowed hard. He looked at Raina, who was standing by the table, her backpack at her feet. She wasn't crying. She wasn't yelling. She was just watching him. Her gaze was intense, analytical, as if she were a scientist observing a particularly disappointing specimen. "Well?" the officer pressed. I, Jenkins stammered. "The purser. She said he couldn't do it. He couldn't be the one to sign the paper that would put this woman in jail on a lie. No charges. The airline is just denying her boarding. She's being denied service for being disruptive." The officer sighed. This was she said, waste of his time. "Fine. She's off the flight. She's your problem now. We're clear." The officers left. It was just Rena and Mark Jenkins in the tiny, sterile room. "Right," Jenkins said, straightening his tie, trying to reclaim a shred of authority. "Well, Miss Hayes, as you've been denied boarding, your ticket is now void. There will be no refund. Furthermore, you will be placed on Global American's no-fly list, pending a full investigation. I'll need to see your passport so I can process the—" He stopped. Because Serafina Hayes had taken out her phone, she was looking at it with a small, cold smile. "What do you think you're doing?" Jenkins asked. "You can't rebook. You're—" "Mr. Jenkins," Rena said, her voice soft. "What is the full, legal corporate name of this airline, the holding company?" "What? I don't see what that has to do with—" "Indulge me," she said, looking up from her phone. Her eyes were black, and all the light in the room seemed to bend toward her. "It's Global American Air Holdings, Incorporated. Why?" "Thank you, Mark." She pressed a single contact on her phone. It rang once. "Arthur," she said. "It's Rena. I'm fine, but I've had a change of plans. Yes, the Blackwood acquisition. I was just thinking about it. Pull up their asset file on Global American Air Holdings. Yes, that's the one. The $700 million in commercial paper. I need you to execute the margin call. No, not Monday. I need you to do it right now." Jenkins's blood turned to ice. He didn't know what commercial paper was, but he knew what $700 million was. Rena listened for a moment. "The reason? Let's call it breach of contract. A profound failure in in-flight services." "Yes, Arthur. The entire tranche. Freeze it. And one more thing. Get me Robert Davies on the phone. Yes, the CEO of Global American. No, I don't care what time it is in Dallas. Tell him Serafina Hayes needs to talk to him about his airline's liquidity. He'll take the call." She hung up. She looked at Mark Jenkins, who was now the color of the beige walls. You can't do that," he whispered. That's not possible." "Global American," Rena said, as if lecturing a student, like many airlines, funds its daily operations, fuel, payroll, gate fees, using short-term debt. Commercial paper. That $700 million, that's the money your airline uses to operate for the next, 48 hours. And my company, as of 6 hours ago, is the sole broker for that debt. By calling in that note, we've triggered a liquidity crisis. We've put a hold on your operating capital. No one at GAA is getting paid, and none of your planes are getting fueled until your CEO explains to me why I'm sitting in a beige box at JFK instead of in seat 1A. Rayna leaned against the wall. So, she said, with a terrifyingly calm smile, how is that no-fly list investigation coming along, Mark? Mark Jenkins felt the room spin. The air, already thin and stale, suddenly felt unbreathable. He was a gate agent. He dealt with baggage fees and standby lists. He did not deal with this. Margin calls and liquidity were terms he heard on cable news, things that happened to banks, not to him, in a sterile room at 10 p.m. You're lying, he managed, but the words came out as a desperate plea, not an accusation. You're just a girl in a hoodie. Rayna's smile didn't waver. And that, Mark, is the single most expensive assumption anyone has made today. Before she could say another word, Jenkins's radio, clipped to his shoulder, exploded with frantic sound. It wasn't the calm, procedural chatter of the gate. It was chaos. All stations. Ops Command just issued a code red. All fuel authorizations are suspended, effective immediately. I repeat, all fuel ops are suspended. Jenkins's hand fumbled as he grabbed the radio. Tower, this is Jenkins at B Terminal. Repeat last transmission. Mark, where the hell are you? The voice was his station manager, a man named Sal. I'm not kidding. The system is frozen. Our primary credit line with JP Morgan is locked, pending a collateral review. They're saying we just defaulted on a massive commercial paper tranche. No one can get fuel. We have 14 planes on the tarmac that can't be... Jenkins looked at Rayna. Her expression was serene. He was holding a live grenade, and she had just pulled the pin. Sal, Jenkins said, his voice cracking. I think I know what the problem is. I'm in interview room 3. You need to get here, and bring Mr. Harrison. Harrison? The EVP? Are you insane? He's in... Just get here, Sal, Jenkins shouted, and clicked off the radio. He stared at Rayna. What do you want? He whispered. What I've always wanted, Mark, Rayna said, sitting down at the table. To be treated with a basic level of human dignity. And as of 10 minutes ago, I want a new ride to London. But we'll get to that. Rayna's phone, sitting on the table, began to buzz. The caller ID was a blocked number. She let it buzz once, twice, a third time. Then she answered, putting it on speaker. Is this Serafina Hayes? A panicked, baritone voice demanded. It is. Who is this? This is Robert Davies, CEO of Global American. What in God's name have you done? My CFO just had a heart attack on a phone call. He says you've called in a $700 million note? That's not... You can't. That's our entire operating float. It's not due for 90 days. Hello, Robert, Rayna said, her voice like velvet-wrapped ice. You're right, it wasn't due. But the terms of that paper, which I'm sure your lawyers are frantically reading right now, include a material adverse change clause. And I've just determined that your company's service standards constitute a very adverse change. My company, Etherian Dynamics, which just acquired your creditor Blackwood Capital, does not invest in partners with discriminatory operational protocols. There was a long, heavy silence on the phone. Davies was connecting the dots. Etherian Dynamics, the $500 billion tech behemoth, Serafina Hayes, the reclusive genius founder, the girl on the Forbes cover he'd just seen, the one not in a suit. Ms. Hayes, Davies said, his voice now shaking with a desperate, manufactured calm. Where are you right now? Are you at home? My office? I'm in a windowless interview room at your JFK-B terminal. Robert, Rena interrupted. I've just been removed from Flight 117 by your gate agent, Mark Jenkins, who is standing right here, and I was accused of assault by your lead purser, Karen Vickers, because I stowed my own backpack. Another, more terrible silence. Mark Jenkins actually whimpered. Robert, Rena continued, that margin call, that's real. The freeze is in place. As of this moment, your airline is functionally insolvent. You have, I'd guess, until the markets open in Asia in 6 hours before this hits the wires, and your stock becomes wallpaper. So, here's what's going to happen. Your Executive Vice President of North American Operations, Mr. Harrison, is going to come down to this room. He is going to personally apologize, and he is going to find my new transportation to London. And then, you and I will discuss the fee for my company to reconsider its position. Yes, Davies sputtered. Absolutely. He's on his way. He's at JFK. I'll call him right now. Ms. Hayes, whatever you want. Anything. Please, just don't hang up. I'm not the one you need to worry about hanging up, Robert. Your entire airline is on hold. I'll be waiting. You have... She checked her watch. 10 minutes. After that, I'm calling my own plane and the Wall Street Journal. She hung up. She leaned back in her chair and looked at Mark Jenkins, who had slumped into the plastic seat opposite her. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. She lied, Jenkins whispered, his face in his hands. Karen, she lied about the assault. I knew she was lying. Yes, she did, Rena said. And you, Mark, you went along with it. Because it was easier. You looked at her, a senior white woman in a uniform, and you looked at me, a black woman in a hoodie, and you made a calculation. You calculated that she had more power than I did. You calculated wrong. The door to the interview room burst open. Sal, the station manager, stood there, pale and out of breath. Behind him was a tall, immaculate man in a $5,000 suit, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. This was Mr. Harrison, the EVP. Ms. Hayes, Harrison said, his voice a strained squeak. He rushed into the room, pushing past Sal. Ms. Hayes, I am... Words cannot express the profound... Save it, Rena said, standing up. Are you the one with the authority to fix this? Yes, Harrison said, wringing his hands. Robert Davis, our CEO, he called me. The margin call. Ms. Hayes, this is a catastrophe. It's a teachable moment, Rena corrected. Here's the lesson. First, I want Mr. Jenkins and Miss Vickers suspended. Not investigated. Suspended. Effective immediately. Done! Harrison squeaked, not even looking at Jenkins. Sal, get their badges. Now! Jenkins looked up, his eyes wide with betrayal. Mr. Harrison, You're done, Mark, Sal snapped, his own job now on the line. Give me your badge. Second, Rena continued, stepping over Jenkins's shattered career. Flight 117. Is it still at the gate? Yes, Harrison said. It can't get fuel. Perfect. I want it held. I want every passenger to deplane, all of them. I want them brought back to the gate. Harrison blinked. Deplane? The whole flight? But why? Because, Rena said, a cruel, cold smile playing on her lips. I want Karen Vickers to make an announcement. I want her to explain to 150 people why their flight to London is cancelled. I want her to tell them it's because she had a problem with my backpack. The scene at Gate B24 was one of complete pandemonium. The passengers of Flight 117, who had been sitting on a hot, stagnant plane for 45 minutes, had been unceremoniously deplaned and herded back into the terminal. The air was thick with anger and confusion. "What is this? Where is our flight? I have a connection." Chad from 1B was the loudest. "This is a disgrace. I paid $10,000 for that seat. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm a Platinum Premier member." Mr. Harrison, the EVP, stood near the podium, his face glistening with sweat. "Please, ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. There has been a significant operational issue." And then Rena walked out of the jet bridge, flanked by Sal and Harrison. She was no longer a pariah. She was the eye of the storm. The passengers who had watched her walk of shame now stared, utterly baffled. "Where is she?" Rena asked Harrison, her voice quiet. She's in the jet bridge," Harrison stammered. "Sal, go get her." Sal disappeared and returned a moment later, dragging Karen Vickers by the elbow. Vickers's face was a mess. Her perfect bun was coming undone. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had clearly been told what was happening. She had been told who Rena was. The smug Victor was gone, replaced by a terrified, broken employee. "There she is," Rena said. She pointed to the podium microphone. "Mr. Harrison, tell her." Harrison swallowed. "Karen." "Ms. Vickers." "Go on," Rena urged. "Ms. Vickers, you will address the passengers," Harrison commanded, his voice shaking. "You will explain the situation." Vickers looked at him, her eyes pleading. "Mr. Harrison, please, do it," he barked, his panic overriding any sense of decorum. Karen Vickers, the 25-year veteran, the petty tyrant of the skies, stumbled to the microphone. The terminal went silent. Good evening," she began, her voice cracking. Ladies and gentlemen of Flight 117, my name is Karen Vickers, and I am the lead purser." She choked on a sob. There has been a misunderstanding, a mistake. She looked at Rena, who was watching her with a completely neutral expression. "Tell them the truth," Rena said, her voice just loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Vickers took a shaky breath. I made a mistake. I falsely accused a passenger of misconduct. I had her removed from the flight. Because of me. This flight." She couldn't say it. "This flight is cancelled," Harrison finished, snatching the mic. "Global American Air Holdings is experiencing a temporary operational freeze. This is my fault," Vickers whispered, a broken admission. "It's all my fault." The crowd erupted, not in sympathy, but in rage. "Your fault? Who are you? You did this?" Chad from 1B pushed to the front. "It is her fault. And that other girl's, the one in the hoodie. They had a fight. I saw it. I have it on video." He held up his phone. This woman," he yelled, pointing at Rena, "got in a fight and now we're all paying for it." The crowd turned, their anger now looking for a new, more satisfying target. They started to surge toward Rena. "Ms. Hayes," Harrison said, his eyes wide with new terror. Rena simply raised one hand. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Do you know who that man is?" "Who?" "The one with the—" "Yes," Rena said. "His name is Chad Williams. He's a junior VP at Morgan Stanley. He's also the man who filmed me being harassed instead of speaking up." Rena pulled out her own phone. "Arthur," she said, once again on speaker. "Rena, I'm here. Is the CEO on the line?" It was Arthur Vance's voice, crisp and clear. "Not yet, Arthur. First, a different matter. I need you to call the CEO of Morgan Stanley. Yes, James Gorman. Tell him his VP, Chad Williams, is at JFK. Gate B24, harassing a business partner. A business partner who, by the way, just acquired the $2 billion Ethereum AI integration account that Morgan Stanley has been trying to land for a year. Tell him the deal is off, and tell him I'm sending him a video of his employees' conduct. Yes, I'll send it now. She hung up. Chad Williams's face had gone from bright pink to a color that resembled raw dough. The phone in his hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I, he stammered. His own phone began to ring, a frantic, vibrating buzz. The caller ID read, Office, CEO. He looked at Raina, his eyes filled with a terror that was almost primal. He didn't answer the call. He just backed away, melting into the crowd, his rainmaker status evaporating before their very eyes. The terminal was silent once more. The hard karma had hit, and it wasn't done. Now, Raina said, turning her attention back to the cowering employees. Mr. Harrison, my flight to London. You have 1 hour to arrange a private jet. A GS in 50 or equivalent. Bill the $50,000 charter fee to Global American's corporate account. Oh, wait. A look of mock realization crossed her face. You can't. Your accounts are frozen. She smiled. Tell you what, I'll have Arthur pay for it, and we'll just add it to the reconsideration fee we'll be discussing tomorrow. The one that starts at $50 million. She looked at Karen Vickers and Mark Jenkins, who were being quietly led away by airport security, their badges in Saul's hand. Their careers were over. Not with a bang, but with a quiet, bureaucratic whimper. As for the rest of you, Raina said, addressing the stunned passengers of Flight 117, Global American has failed you. They will all be put on other carriers in upgraded seats at GAA's expense, and you will all receive a full refund and a $10,000 voucher for your trouble. Mr. Harrison will be handling that personally. Won't you, Mr. Harrison? Harrison, who now looked 10 years older, just nodded numbly. Yes, Ms. Hayes. Of course. Raina slung her backpack over her shoulder. Good. My work here is done. She started to walk away, leaving the chaos of the gate behind her. She was headed to the private aviation terminal, where a black Gulfstream would be waiting, paid for by the arrogance of a company that had forgotten its one and only job, to get the customer where they needed to go. An hour later, Serafina Hayes was in the presidential lounge of the private aviation terminal, a silent, wood-paneled sanctuary. The chaos of the commercial terminal and Mr. Harrison's profusely sweaty apology felt 1,000,000 miles away. She was sipping a glass of water when her phone rang. The caller ID was blocked. It was Robert Davies, the CEO. His panic was gone, replaced by the hollow, exhausted tone of total surrender. Ms. Hayes, Raina, he began. Mr. Harrison has explained the full situation, the public nature of it, the video. Ms. Hayes, you've made your point. You've brought us to our knees. He took a shaky breath. That $700 million freeze. It's not just fuel. It's our payroll. It's our landing fees. It's triggering cross-defaults on our bonds. By the time the markets open, we're bankrupt. We are done. Please, just tell me what you want. I have no interest in bankrupting 100,000 employees over the actions of 2, Robert, Raina said, her voice cool and steady. But I am interested in accountability, and I am interested in ensuring this never, ever happens again. So here are my terms. She stood and walked to the window, watching her new plane, a sleek Gulfstream GS-50, taxi into view. First, she said, the $50 million reconsideration fee we discussed. It's no longer a fee. It's a $50 million donation. You will be the founding and very public donor to the Skies for All initiative, a scholarship fund I am establishing for minority women in aviation and business. Davies was silent. This was public guilt, carved in stone. "Done," he whispered. "We're not done," Rena said. "Second, my team at Ethereum will graciously agree to extend the $700 million note, but the terms just changed. The interest rate, which was 1.5%, is now 6.5%. Your weak returns just became very profitable for me." Davies groaned, a low sound of financial pain. That was millions in new interest payments. "Third," Rena pressed, "and this is non-negotiable. Global American Airlines will, as of tomorrow, enter into a mandatory 5-year contract with Ethereum Dynamics. My company will be providing your entire workforce, from the boardroom to the baggage handlers, with a new bias, de-escalation, and ethics training program, run by our AI division. We are going to rebuild your corporate culture." "A training contract?" Davies asked. "A training contract," Rena confirmed, "at a cost of $100 million per year. We are, after all, the best in the world." This was the master stroke. She wasn't just punishing them. She was forcing them to pay her $500 million to fix them. "So to summarize, Robert," Rena said, as an attendant appeared to take her bag, "you are going to publicly fund minority scholarships. You're going to pay me 4 times the interest for your own cash, and you're paying my company to teach your staff how to be decent human beings. Do we have an agreement?" Robert Davies, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar airline, had no choice. He had been completely and financially outmaneuvered. "Yes, Ms. Hayes," he said, his voice a ghost. "We have an agreement." "Good. Arthur will be sending over the new contracts. I expect them signed by 0800 London time. And Robert, have a pleasant evening." She hung up. "Ms. Hayes, your flight is ready for boarding." "Thank you," Rena said. She picked up her battered leather backpack, the one that had started it all, and walked onto the tarmac. She climbed the steps of the sleek white jet, sat in a plush cream leather chair, and as the jet began its powerful ascent, she finally texted her mother. "Me. On my way, Mom. Had to change planes. But I'm bringing champagne. The story of the JFK freeze was never reported in the mainstream media. Corporate warfare, especially a total surrender, is almost always silent. But in the aviation and financial worlds, the story became a legend. The hard karma hit immediately. Karen Vickers and Mark Jenkins were terminated for cause, losing their pensions and their entire careers over one fleeting, ugly abuse of power. Karen's lawsuit was laughed out of court when her own texts, boasting of getting rid of the riffraff, were produced. Chad Williams was fired from Morgan Stanley before his phone call with his outraged CEO even ended. The video he took proved only Rena's calm and Vickers's aggression. Pulling a Chad became internal slang for career-ending stupidity. Global American Airlines survived, but it was a different company. Forced by Rena, their $50 million donation to the Skies for All initiative was a public mark of shame, and the $500 million ethics training contract with Ethereum was a brutal, forced education. Ethereum's AI-driven modules relentlessly rooted out bias, and within 3 years, GAA had the highest satisfaction scores in the industry. Rena didn't just punish them, she forced them to pay her to fix their broken culture. And Serafina Rena Hayes, she arrived in London at 7 a.m. Her surprise for her mother was a complete success, but her company, Ethereum Dynamics, had a new, wildly profitable division. Conscience as a service, as her team called it, was in high demand. Other corporations, terrified of being frozen, lined up to have Ethereum fix their cultures. Rena never flew Global American again. She took her own plane. But the real victory wasn't the $700 million. It was the new terms of service she had written for an entire industry that had forgotten who it was supposed to serve. Thank you for listening to this story of karma, consequence, and the hidden power that lies in being underestimated. We all have a Karen Vickers or a Mark Jenkins in our lives, people who judge us by a cover they didn't bother to read. But the story of Serafina Hayes reminds us that the best revenge isn't getting angry. It's getting powerful. It's about building a life, a career, and a fortress of success so strong that your calmness is more terrifying than their anger. What did you think of Rena's ultimate move? Was it pure justice or a cold-hearted business play? Let us know in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama and hard karma, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see that the little guy, or in this case, the underestimated girl, can win. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel. We have new stories coming every week, and you don't want to miss a single one.